Morning, everybody. I'm Des Paul. I'm the room host here at Radio Days for track 4 on this second day. We have what I would describe as we're serving the niche with this session.
It's the committed.
Concentrated market are very interested in what you have.
It's the A-team. It's the A-team.
Yeah. And before you go any further, I just need to congratulate Jaqueline on becoming the new president of the WorldDAB.
Thanks.
Yeah. No pressure.
No, not at all.
But a great panel, and it's something very important because obviously content in cars, when it comes to audio, is constantly evolving as we move to EV products and cars become computers and all that kind of thing. And we know how much listening is done in cars. It's super important that people make sure it looks as good as possible. So, Jackie, I'll hand over to you to introduce our great panel.
Thank you.
40 minutes is yours.
Well, thank you for being here. It's not a big crowd, but it's an interesting topic. And I'm glad to be here with Joe and Laurence. And we're going to talk about radio in cars, and it has been talked about through this event several times. And I saw your impressive presentation yesterday, and I saw all the people running to look to your Tesla and and with you as well in the stand you have. So please, why do you want to talk with the three of us about radio in cars? What's the reason, Joe?
Sure. Well, the car has always been the place to listen to radio, right? We all love it. It's your companion. It informs you when you're moving through a city about local events, about traffic, and preserving that prominence in the car, I believe, is critical. And there's a huge opportunity with this convergence of technology and content and innovation to make radio even more engaging, make it more informative, and give radio just another 50 years of prominence in the car. And I think, Radioplayer and Xperi have a common interest in doing that. That can be, exhibited, and you could see it in the cars today on the show floor. So we're very committed to radio. We think there's huge opportunities, and it's a medium that's really worth the investment and the preservation.
Yes, Laurence, for you, why do you want to join this panel?
I mean, I think it's obviously we talked about, you can see the stands and what we're doing out there, and you can see that we're committed to keeping radio strong in connected car. I think it's about the emotional connections. I was thinking before coming to the panel, when are the sort of magical times that I've been listening to radio in the car and what that's been like? And the first one was actually when my first child was born, and I came out of the hospital, you're emotional, the rest of it, and I got in the car, and I was, a bit elated, turned on the radio, didn't like what was playing, found another station, and they were playing my favourite song. It was Don't Stop Me Now by Queen. And it was just, I remember that moment, do you know what I mean? It was a really powerful moment. I imagine everyone in the audience has probably had a moment like that where they can think back to when they were in the car, listening to radio. I'm getting emotional now, just thinking.
Oh yeah, that's the beauty of radio.
It takes you back, right?
Yeah, that's what it does.
It's the connection, it really does.
Yeah.
And the other one for me, sorry, I know it's a personal thing, but I think it makes the point, is sport. So sport is a match made in heaven in car for me, and my team is Everton. And when I was in the car in a traffic jam, and they scored a winning goal against Manchester United, who I can't stand, and I accidentally banged the steering wheel, blew the horn, and the guy in the car in front was sort of jumped out of his skin. But it's the moments like that. It's that personal connection. Yeah. Now I think, sorry, I'm going to stop in a minute, but
that's all right.
You're right. News, traffic, information, the songs, the music you like are so important. And I think keeping radio prominent and accessible, just as Joe said, is vital. And that's what we're 100% focused on.
Yeah, well, we saw it this morning for everybody who was there at 9 o'clock in the morning. Also EBU presenting its EBU playbook. And it is so important that we collaborate all together. And that's also what WorldDAB is doing. Yeah? So for the role of WorldDAB in the last decade that I was very intensively participating in everything, we have automotive workshops and we have automotive committees, user experience committees, and we're all active in that. So competition is actually collaborating, and that's not only on broadcasters level, private and commercial broadcasters, but also the chip manufacturers, the antenna builders, and the OEMs. Yep. So for that, you're also participating in the several things, and that's why I am here today in this session. Yeah. So let's talk about content in the car and how easy you can find it or not, and what is the content that drivers love. We already heard a little bit about you, Joe.
Well, radio, I'm speaking to a radio audience. You guys know radio's biggest strength is live and local, right? It's contextual audio that's available at the touch of a button, whether it's news, sports, music, really whatever you want is there. It's free, but discovering content is becoming a real challenge. The success of DAB in Europe and other countries, other parts of the world, and the success of HD radio in North America has opened up a wide array of new programming choices for your audience. But discovering what's on the dial now is a huge challenge. In New York City, where I grew up, we had about 35 FM radio stations. Now with HD radio, we have over 100. And so thinking about sitting in a car going, one frequency by frequency, listen to what's being played, then decide if you want to listen to it, that's not tenable in a market with 100 radio stations. You need a richer visual way to find and discover radio. So, I think that's one of the biggest challenges, but one of the best opportunities for radio.
Yeah. Laurence?
Well, I think you mentioned the playbook, and I think it's really interesting. It's a really clear message from the broadcasters about the kind of relationship that broadcasters need to have with the car companies to make radio great in the car. And we like to think we play a small role in that. But I think what they were really saying was that this is a collaboration, right? And this is the broadcasters need to bring to that the great content they have. And the way you surface that in the car is through metadata. And I know we'll kind of come on to talk about that.
Yes.
But I think the other thing that really rang through in the presentation earlier was about simplicity. So, and that's so important. So as you get all these new technologies coming into the car, the danger is that things become more complex. The reality is that the technology should make things simpler. And radio wins when it's simple. There's no doubt about that. And I think some of the research, car buyers research that WorldDAB did last year really rang true on that. I think people were very clear about the fact that the simplicity of radio, the fact it's easy to find, is really, really important. But then when it comes to the content itself, I think you're absolutely right. I think we know what people love. We know it's news and information. We know it's travel and weather. We know it's music. But it is about getting to that. I think, you look at, the danger is that you look at some cars and you look at some technology and you think, wow, look at all these things. The reality is a really great radio is at its best when you've got a simple way to find your station and you access it straight away. And that's kind of what we're aiming for.
Yeah, because that's what broadcast radio is all about, the simplicity. And that's also where we are with WorldDAB organizing our automotive events for the last years. And this year it will be in Prague in June. And gathering OEMs, talking and showing them the importance, but also that they tell us what they are all doing together, working with you or working with Radioplayer, to get a good experience in that car, because that user experience is key. Because if you talk about content, the nice thing about digital is that we can offer much more. Yeah. As you said, it is much more, but how do you know that it's there and how it's out there? So you want an easy way to do it without driving yourself to death, for example, by talking, or anything like that. So what features do you love most about radio?
What features do we love? Laurence, you go first. I don't want to.
It's great, yeah. In football, that's known as a hospital pass. Yeah, when you struggle, you're thinking, okay. No, I'm going to come. I think there's two things. There's two things here. One is, and I'm going to bang this drum consistently, simplicity and prominence, right? Yeah. So, and I think we can call that a feature for radio. That should be a feature for radio. It has to be simple and prominent. So that's the first thing, and we can't underestimate the challenge we've got in making that happen. And to enable that, to give the car makers the confidence, our car maker partners confidence to make radio prominent, the user experience has to be amazing. And I think that's where the second thing comes in, because the features we know that are going to make a difference are the ones that allow the user to get into the station brands and really explore your content in the car. So it's no longer the case where, you want to listen to live radio, right? That's the first thing you go for. But actually, there's so much other content from that station, from that presenter, from that brand, from that group.
So you mean you can go to other stations of that group or podcasts?
If you want to explore it, and really engage with the brand, the station brand in the car, keeping that listening strong or even growing it. Now the challenge there is around managing the user journey for that, right? It can't be complex, it's got to be simple. But the opportunity to build features that give you that brand engagement is unparalleled. You know, there's huge opportunities to do that.
Yeah, yeah, we can see that 90% of the Europeans, we did research on that, don't want to buy a car where there's no radio in it.
Yeah.
And there are
Yeah.
cars in the market that don't have a radio.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think from my perspective, if you look at kind of the historical position radio had, I think the fact that radio is reliable and it's consistent, right? When you turn on the radio, the audio starts playing. There's no buffering. You don't have to worry if you've got the right app downloaded or whatever. Radio just works. And I think that simplicity and consistency of the service delivery is probably its foundation. As you look at hybrid radio, which we're both, actively involved in, and you look at what you can do, what additional features can you wrap around the radio experience, I really think the jury is out on what is going to be the most impactful feature. For example, we support lyrics in in Mercedes and Nissan vehicles. It's a great feature. Is it something that's really going to be used in the car? Maybe. We'll have to see how the consumers react to it. So you can do a lot with connected radio, and I think Laurence went on about the deeper integration with additional content, right? Using radio as the portal to discover other content from broadcasters. That's a great use case. So there's a lot you can do, but I think we're in the very early days of figuring out what's going to be the most valuable extension of radio for consumers.
And just to build on what you said there, the interesting thing, and one of the things that WorldDAB has done really well, and we've done plenty of this in the past, is to actually, it sounds really obvious, right? But test the features with the user.
Yeah.
Because
that's how the danger is you take the attitude that if you build it, they will come. But the reality is in the car, especially in the car, you have to be able to understand what the user journey is going to be, what they're going to like, what they're going to not like.
Yeah.
And without doing that, you leave yourself open to, as you said, you're not sure you've got a winner, you're not sure who's going to win. So it's got to be right for the user.
Well, that's exactly what we've done with Edison research last year. So not the year before,
exactly.
we had another research with Edison done. But last year, we really interviewed thousands of people and also did in-depth interviews in cars where we really filmed the people in their response to how they use the radio and what's actually their experience when they use it. And they sometimes hated it.
Yeah.
And of course, we blurred away the brands because you have to be considerate. We are now amongst broadcasters all together here, so we can be. But that's why it's so important that we join forces and do the same thing. I know we all develop our own apps, and that's good. But you also have to have the radio button that just functions with broadcast and the IP things alongside. And it needs to be easy. And those interviews, we had the dashboard dialogue, and I know my colleague Will made sure that we share those flints and those little pieces of dialogue online. So, but we also bring them to the car OEMs. So we talk to them and show them what they need to do.
We did something similar last year. I don't know if you're familiar with J.D. Power, big automotive research company in the U.S. They do something called IQS, Initial Quality Scores, for cars when they first come into the market. And car brands in the U.S. kind of live and die on those IQS scores. So we actually hired J.D. Power to do about 9 months of research on our behalf on other media platforms coming into the car. How were they successful? Were they safe? Were they distracting? And then help us redefine our reference interface. So we provide kind of a guideline to car companies on how they can implement our content, your content. And at the end of that 9 months, J.D. Power had a recommendation for a user interface that was tested with over, I think, 2,000 respondents in a very controlled environment. And what we have found is by doing that, we're accelerating the product development by probably a year for our connected car implementations. But it takes that
So
kind
valuable,
of
huh?
yeah,
It's really valuable to know.
and very expensive, by the way.
Yes, we are aware of that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, but it's good that we share. So competition is even sharing the knowledge that we get out of that kind of research.
Yeah.
So because we are there on the barricades to keep radio prominent in the car, and you sometimes forget that because we all have our own things that we want to gain for. But in the end, ultimately, we are there to keep radio prominent under one button in the car, in the forefront of the dashboard.
What was interesting was just building on what Joe was saying. I was at an event a few months ago now, and there was a car maker there, and what they'd done is they'd put a kind of feedback button into the dashboard, so you could allow their users to give you on the move live feedback about the interface, and it was very clearly marked that way. And of course, the question came from the audience: well, what sort of feedback you're getting? And the main one was the users were complaining that they couldn't access a load of features that were deliberately turned off while the car was driving.
Yeah.
So in other words, they wanted to be distracted more than the car maker was allowing them. Now,
Yes.
driver distraction is a whole other topic, and it's relevant to this conversation, right? But it was really interesting to hear that was kind of the main thing. It was, why can't I do this when I'm driving? It's kind of...
It's part of the user experience working group as well. Driver distraction is a key issue, and we want to be careful with it because you get disclaimers and so on. So you need to be careful with that, but you need to be aware that you make car makers aware that you can't just continue to develop all sorts of things that they think out of the box for our stations, because that you also sometimes come across that they want to go further than just radio because you can. But just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. And that's with features.
And while we're on the subject now, but the European Crash Test Organisation has just announced they're going to bring in some new tests to look specifically at driver distraction around the dashboard and infotainment.
Yeah.
Because, you've seen there's some quite confusing dashboard spaces where people are just presenting the technology, not necessarily doing the tests and thinking about the user experience. And actually that could be, that piece of regulation and those tests could be an opportunity for radio. Because of radio's public value, because of the prominence we know it deserves and needs to have, maybe out of that kind of thing, from a European perspective at the moment, that could be a big opportunity for us, I think.
Well, it's a nice bridge. Or do you...
I just wanted to make one other point, kind of a challenge to the broadcasters in the room. A lot of radios in cars now are configurable, where the driver has the choice of where they place different media platforms. You can do that in a lot of our cars. GM is probably the biggest or the first one, where you can move the navigation over here, radio here, climate control. So as those capabilities get put in the hands of your audience, remind them to put radio first. You're talking to them every day. Make sure that they're aware of the control they have over radio.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a bit like ask for your station, say this on voice speakers. You move the radio button to,
We have top of the hours. We have our communication on air. We can do things on that. Once we have a uniform way of talking and behaving the same way, all stations behaving the same way with FM, DAB+, and online, and the metadata. There's a new bridge to the metadata.
There we
nice
go.
bridge, good work.
We're there.
That's good work,
We're there. This is what you came for.
Yes. So, metadata. First, who wants to tell and explain for the people that don't know what it is?
All right.
Or just fill up.
So, and actually, I'm going to give you the definition of metadata. That's how exciting this session is going to be.
You came with notes.
Yeah. I thought, you were going to...
Okay.
So, a set of data that describes and gives information about other data. And the other data is your station, right? So this is the information about your station, and only with that information, that metadata, can we make radio look good in the car dashboard. Right. It is the lifeblood for radio in the car. It's as simple as that. And we'll talk about different types of metadata and things like that, but it could, station logos, station names, now playing data, genre, name of host, name of show, all sorts. And all these things are just so important, because once you've got them, not only is it a rich visual experience, not only will it sound great, not only can you enable hybrid radio to work well, but then you can start to think about some of the features we were talking about earlier, like the personalized features, you can start to cross-reference content and do that deeper dive into the station's brand that we talked about. So it's so important, and the playbook referenced this earlier. This is one of the things that the broadcasters,
Yes.
through us,
Need to
have
do.
to get right, and for the car makers, what they want is consistency.
Absolutely.
It has to be a consistent experience, and we want that too. And if we get that, we win.
Yeah, and you use platforms that have rich metadata every day. If any of you use Apple Music or Spotify or Netflix, any of those platforms are as powerful as they are because of the metadata. They help you find the content, they engage you with the content, they give that content depth and breadth. So it is absolutely critical that radio be on a level playing field with every other media source that your audience is engaged with every day.
Yeah, it's, I think, one of the most important things that do not really integrate through the entire radio stations. If I talk to the CEOs, and they are aware because they ask me to do my work, but then I go deeper into the organization and some people are not aware, or some people even think, hey Jackie, nice of you to have a project like DAB, or nice of you to have a project like Radioplayer, or but that I'm instrumental, that it's my project, but that's not what it is. Metadata is essential, and you can bring it on two ways. You can bring it through DAB+, and you can bring it through online. And then it matters how you do that. So OEMs receive it in a way that they put it in their dashboards, and that's what these two companies are really good at, and giving a good experience.
Yeah, it's a challenge because metadata, as Laurence was saying, has a number of different categories, right? There's the station level metadata, which can be anything from your slogan to your station logo down to social media links, phone numbers, anything that's kind of relatively static around your radio station. Then you have periodic metadata. Maybe it's about the show or a sporting event. You want to make sure you're curating that and sending that in the appropriate format, whether it's RDS, slideshow, or over to one of the hybrid platforms. And then you have the episodic or the song level events, which are critical. And I think what I try to get radio stations to do when they are talking to us around metadata is put the same care and attention into your metadata that you do your audio programming. You wouldn't put some crap announcer on the air or play some song that your audience couldn't understand, for example. It's in a foreign language. Your metadata has to be accessible and relevant to the content you're playing. It has to be consistent, and you will reap the benefits of that if you just instill that discipline.
I mean, just to build on that, one of the things that we do when we're talking to the stations, and we've done research on this actually through WorldDAB in the past, was to go to people that are running station groups and say to them, ask a very simple question. Who's responsible in your station for making it look good in a car? I don't know. Very few stations can actually answer that question.
Yeah.
Now, you'll have somebody responsible for your mobile app, your presence on the web, and why haven't you got somebody responsible for, and some do, but many don't. And I think it's that placing that level of importance on it is critical. And of course, for us, it's about that engagement directly with the stations and trying to make sure that they're doing this in the right way and helping them, if it's a smaller station, for example, to be able to generate the right metadata and get it to us in the right way. But having someone responsible is crucial. No doubt.
Yes, making people aware. The stations need to be aware why we are doing this, to make radio look good, because of those black screens.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they don't even want to work with the broadcasters. And that's when we disappear. Because if we don't look good, they take somebody else who does.
The other thing you may not even be aware of, a lot of the technology you already have deployed in your radio stations is capable of helping you do this.
Yes.
If you're using RCS, for example, Zeta can absolutely structure and offload metadata for a variety of platforms. So you should definitely look into that. I'm sure you're doing a lot of this already on your digital platforms. Just make sure it's available on your broadcast solutions as well. And then the final point, this is kind of a word of caution, is be very careful with what you add to your metadata offering. make sure it's licensed. Make sure you have rights to that. We work very closely with all the major record labels. We have the Rovi or TiVo music metadata database. There's Grace Note. There's Music Story. There are companies that can provide you a licensed catalog of images that you can use. Make sure you don't go across copyright law. They vary in jurisdictions, so I'll leave that to you to sort out what kind of rights you need. But just like you have to license music, you have to license metadata as well. So be careful with it.
Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean,
I think that's a very good remark.
Yeah, no. I mean, you're absolutely right. You've got to have the rights. It's got to be official metadata. It's got to be from the broadcasters. You're getting directly. You need to know that what you're taking is from them and it's coming straight through you and into the car. And that's what we try and do and others try and do. It's so important. So yeah, completely agree.
So let's talk about how you navigate on the radio. You know, you can do that with your fingers. Or you can do it on the wheel.
Yeah.
And the metadata helps you on the wheel as well.
Sure.
Yeah. And you can do it by speaking.
By speech, yeah.
And what do we need for that with phonemes and so on? Because we have a working group on that as well within WorldDAB.
Of course you do.
Of course we do.
We got working groups on everything at
Yeah,
WorldDAB.
well, we are very much...
Very busy.
Working groups on working groups.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Because it's important. You can
Yeah,
see now,
very.
it's the key to get there.
It's important to have a place to have these conversations.
Yes, and that's the central place.
But yeah, just to dive into voice, it's really important because voice is, voice, and I think OJ, you say this a lot. It's the new FM dial for tuning in the radio in the car. That's what it should be. Voice and radio is essentially a match made in heaven. You take out the driver distraction element if voice is working well to surface the station and the content that you want. Now, the work that WorldDAB is doing is, and Radio DNS, I should say, as well, and that we've tried to do in terms of on behalf of the broadcasters, is about making sure that if you're asking for the station you want, that you get surfaced that station accurately, right? So that's based around having the right station name. And if your station is a simple station to ask for, the chances are that if you're asking for it over a white label voice assistant or Google or Alexa, you'll get that station back. But sometimes that may not happen if you might not get the right local variation of the station, or you may have a station name like NRJ is the classic, which can sound like energy. You might get a different station, not the one you wanted. So having the right aliases for the station, the nicknames effectively. And so, yeah, we try and help the stations by providing a database with those nicknames. And then if that doesn't work, you've got the phonemes, which I think is Nick would probably tell you a lot about this if he's here, but kind of the language that describes phonetically how the station can be pronounced. And then that gives you a better chance of surfacing the right content that you want from your radio. Yeah. But the final point I would say is that I think hope that with voice, and we saw this at CES actually, was that a lot of the voice assistants working with new AI technology, actually in the future we should have a much more accurate voice service for radio, where it's maybe been challenging in the past, and that's our hope. And we're sort of trying to build in some technology around that
AI
can work
comes
as
around
well.
the corner.
Yeah. I mean, AI is another.
Right, that's another session.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, remember when Alexa first came out and you could order a pizza and you could, make airline reservations or just get the weather? The reason that worked because there was underlying metadata that would translate your spoken word into text, then do a lookup, and then retrieve the content that you were looking for. That's exactly what we need for radio. Xperi, with our group All in Media, has worked with the industry in Australia to fix this problem a couple of years ago. What you guys announced yesterday with Google was fantastic. In Australia, they were using TuneIn. Google and Amazon were both using TuneIn as their index for radio stations. And the match rate was awful, about 30% accuracy. So we went in with a big proposition, again, just like you announced yesterday, that we would work with the industry to fix that and offer the solution to Amazon and to Google. And as a result, the match rate went up to like 98%. Yeah. It's very critical if these smart speaker platforms are going to become the way people listen to radio in the home. You're absolutely going to need to be able to find the right station with the language you would use every day to describe the radio station. You know, it's not just the frequency or even the formal name or call sign. There are all those slang terms, you know, the
or
big
even your
this
presenter.
and,
Your presenter,
right.
if you
Find
like
the morning
him, you know?
show by
the morning
its
show.
name.
You say, hey, play this or that.
Right.
And you don't want it through a third-party aggregator somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere far, far away where you don't have control over your distribution, because that's actually what it's all about.
Yeah, yeah.
We create beautiful content, but we want to keep control over our own distribution. And you know, FM did that because we have a broadcast network there. DAB then came, and all of a sudden people thought, I don't really need it. But we see that by implementing DAB+ in the countries, and now all over Europe, it's there, you know, and there's big interest in Africa, interest in Asia. So it's now common good. But what you see it does, it revives. It gives it a new elan. Mm-hmm. Because we are 100 years old, but we're not. We're as popular as we ever were, and that is because we are so innovative. Huh?
Well, the other thing we should, you're absolutely right. I completely agree. The other thing we should say about voice is that, you know, it's really important that when you ask for a station in the car via voice, we think it should play via broadcast. If it's available on broadcast, it should play via broadcast, right? And I think this was referenced in the playbook this morning. So wholeheartedly agree. And only if it isn't, then you would default to, you know, getting the online stream from us or whoever. But I think that's really important, and making sure that the consistency of those kind of processes and rules are understood, and we're kind of repeating those to the car companies and everyone else is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the bridge between your digital strategies and the automotive needs to be very tight. Like we launched Nation Player yesterday, which is an app platform that's fully integrated with our AutoStage automotive platform. So whatever you're designing and integrating into the app platforms can be easily leveraged into these connected cars, whether you're working with us or with Radioplayer.
So, what are the biggest trends? So you were both in America with on the CES?
CES, yeah, Consumer Electronics. Yeah,
and you saw some new things coming up there. Joe, what do you feel is happening in cars?
Yeah.
What might be a threat even to radio?
It's crazy. The pace of innovation in the cars is a bit conflicted. We talk about driver safety, driver distraction, but yet you have car companies launching video and gaming in the dash. They're doing it, I believe, because they want to control that in-car media experience. And we are rapidly moving towards an autonomous future for vehicles. I never thought it would happen. We saw what happened in Germany this summer, level 4 autonomy on the Autobahn with a couple Mercedes vehicles. What's critical in that is the responsibility for the operation of the vehicle. Level 3, the responsibility is with the driver. Level 4, the responsibility is with the car. The car has responsibility for its operations. That's where we're headed. So if you believe that's going to come in the future, I don't know if it's 25 years from now, but that's going to unlock that media, that dashboard, as really the third space for media and entertainment. And in that world, I believe the car companies want to participate. They don't want to give it to Apple, to Google, to Amazon to control. They want to participate. And that's why we're leaning into this. We've launched video with BMW. They have their audio implementation here. They're also doing gaming. And a final point on all of this, while it sounds nuts, there's a huge opportunity for radio stations. We're working with radio stations now on driver games, where you can produce a quiz show, you can produce trivia, song games that the driver can play along with your station while they're safely driving the car. How many of you have in-studio cameras on your morning shows? How cool would it be when you drive to the charging station, you can switch from the audio-only broadcast and now watch the video stream? You're doing that for a reason, right? It's probably on TV platforms or apps. You're going to be able to do that in the car. We're taking those in-studio feeds and we're wrapping them into our video platform. So you can compete on all mediums, on all platforms with everything that's coming into the car. So that's what we're seeing.
Yes,
it's exciting and fun for sure.
Yes, it is. And you?
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting going around CES, and I think what we were seeing was we really were, and this is actually the discussion that we're having with most of the broadcasters when we talk about it, is there is a concern, there is a worry about how crowded the dashboard is becoming, and a concern that radio is going to get crowded out of that.
Yeah.
And you can see, as you said, you can see it, the car makers presenting lots of different types of media services and things like that. And so the discussions that we have, certainly with our broadcasters, there's a lot about prominence and a lot about that sort of concern and worry. So I think that was one of the big takeaways that we had. And so we're trying to stay focused, trying to think, well, okay, in this emerging world, how can we keep radio and audio really prominent and really easy to access? And I think that brings me on to the second trend, because, and Joe will be seeing this as well, with the convergence of technologies into the car, what's happening behind the scenes is that the discussions you have with potential partners and collaborations and the car companies is increasing tenfold.
Yeah.
Because it's unlocking discussions that will enable new features. So, and just like these are, just thinking about what this could mean. You think about charging, for example, that charging time. The worry is that somebody will, get in the car and watch, I don't know, Only Fools and Horses or Gladiator or something. We want them to be listening to radio.
Right.
So if we've got the information on how long that charging time is, could we offer them a little radio charge time piece of curated content for that duration? It's ready to go, press the button. It could be a mix of live and on demand, I don't know, news, sport headlines. So there's an opportunity there. And then the other thing is that we're thinking about, and we've got a bit of a demo on this on a stand between devices, is how you get sort of how you keep the radio listening from outside the car into the car.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you're listening on your app, whether it's Radioplayer, Broadcaster app, when you get into that car, if you've got some favourites or whatever, could it either pick up where you're listening from on the broadcast hybrid radio, or it also syncs up your favourites to the broadcast and hybrid radio?
Yep.
But that's all about, that can't happen without the partnerships and the collaboration behind the scenes. And I think that's kind of the other big trend we're seeing. There's a lot of that going on.
It's a complete customer journey to keep radio on and on and on. And that's what resonates also with me. But the thing is, we want to keep radio prominent. There's a lot of other things going on, but we want radio in the forefront of the dashboard. And, I think we've come through a lot of the stuff that we wanted to talk about.
Sure.
Perhaps there are some questions or... not all at the same time, please. I can see that it's very crowded now. Oh, yeah, Caroline. There's a mic coming.
Thank you. It's on? No. Well, you can hear me anyway. I just wanted to add something, not nearly necessarily asking a question, because you were talking about metadata, and that's my big thing. But some of the broadcasters, we know, forget to actually clean them up. And that's also very important. Because if your playout system is delivering metadata, and you think, that's perfect, everything's going out, please make sure that bed 1, jingle 3 is out of the equation. Also, maybe spend 5 minutes about thinking about, does everything needs to be capitalized? Maybe have a consistent way of doing the artist names, or maybe do have some, big letters at some point. And that's also very important. So clean up your metadata and then make it available to all of us.
Are there any other? Yeah. Are there any other questions or remarks? Yes.
Hi, I'm Till from Munich. I'm CEO of 3 radio stations. Joe, you talked about in-car audio games. That rang a bell. Can you tell us?
Yeah, it's very early days, but if you look at Mercedes, Tesla, and BMW, they all have gaming functionality now. Traditional console games that are only allowed to be played while the car's parked. What we're looking at is passenger games and driver games. So categories of games that the passengers can play and categories of games that the drivers can play. So you have examples around the world. I mean, radio's origin actually was in quiz games, on-air quiz games. So we took that with this desire of the OEMs to have this category of entertainment, and we've been working with sports and music stations to develop content that we can then package in an audio-based gaming experience for the driver. It'll be available while you're, tuned to their station. You can hit a button, say, I want to play the game, and it'll be local trivia It can be sports trivia, music trivia, and it's all voice driven. So it's very cool. We've prototyped it, and we've demonstrated it at CES. And now we're offering it to our automotive partners. But there's monetization opportunities around it as well for the broadcasters. So it's a great opportunity to take advantage of what the car guys already want to do and come with content that you're uniquely prepared to curate and obviously monetize with your audience.
You need a pilot for German markets, let's talk.
Okay, perfect.
At least there's enthusiasm. That's nice.
Sorry, Caroline.
Any other?
I'm not supposed to do any business in Germany.
I think we are at the end of this session today, and thank you all for being here. And perhaps you.
Yeah, big thank you to Joe and to Jackie and to Laurence.
Well done.
Yeah.
Keep things simple, right? Keep things simple.
Keep it
Power
simple.
of metadata in an ever more complicated world.
You were listening.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be back in 20 minutes to discuss Generation Alpha. And you've got 20 minutes to
That was
work
fun.
out what
Yeah,
age
good
they
fun.
actually
Yeah,
are.
Thanks,
good job.
Joe.
Well done, Jack.